Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be grilling up some marinated chicken. And so what I want to show you is a very easy, simple marinade that you can just throw together for when you're wanting to barbecue some chicken breasts. This is what I like to do. Now typically I like to buy whole chickens. I wait until they get marked down to $2 a piece for the organic ones, and then I cook up, I'll bake up a chicken, a whole chicken one day, we'll eat on that, and then through the week make 3, 4, 5 different types of meals from that one chicken. But every so often when I see the organic skinless chicken breasts on sale for $2 off, I'll stock up on a few packs of these because it is really nice to have like this for the purpose of using raw, using like this to marinate and then to barbecue. And then I'm also going to be telling you what you can do with the leftovers. So don't be afraid to marinate up a whole bunch and barbecue up a whole bunch, because if you have leftovers, the marinated leftover chicken goes so well in many things. Okay, let's get started and I'll show you the super easy marinade that I make. So obviously the first thing you want to do is open up that package of chicken breasts. And I just have 2, it's just the 2 of us, and these 2 are enough to feed us a few dinners. We'll eat on one tonight, and then the other one will be used for making another dinner that I'll talk about in a bit. So what I like to do is, you can see I'm using this casserole dish. This is really good because it's already got a lid. I don't have to waste plastic wrap or foil. I don't even have to use my wax fabric, which I have a video on this, I'll go ahead and link to up here, but I can simply use this. It's easier to wash and care for. So I like to poke a few holes on the top part, on the smooth part of the chicken breast. This isn't really necessary, but this really helps get the flavor down into the meat. This side, this reverse side, you don't really have to do it at all. It soaks in very well from this back side. Better than this top side here. So typically I'll just do the back, but you can do both sides if you want. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is these Kavala liquid aminos. I'll go ahead and link to these below, but you can simply use Bragg's liquid aminos. Those are a really good option if you don't mind it being soy. We use that one quite a bit, but I'm out right now, so I'm using the coconut aminos. But for this particular recipe, the coconut aminos are really, really great in it. You may even want to consider, because they're not as salty as the liquid aminos, you may want to consider adding a little bit of salt. I didn't the last time I tried it, and it turned out really good. So anyway, I'm going to pour in about a ½ cup or so. See, I'm not even using measurements. And this is just for 2 chicken breasts, so if you're doing more, obviously you're going to want to double this or triple it. And now I'm going to take about that much again of my homemade white wine. This was made from our own organically grown grapes right out the back there. So that much again. And then I'm going to sprinkle in about a tablespoon, a little less than a tablespoon of ginger, about a tablespoon of onion, and again a tablespoon of garlic. Oh, let's put in just a little bit more. And then if you'd like to add a kick to it, take a little bit, up to a teaspoon or so, of cayenne pepper. That's more like a ½ teaspoon. I don't want to make this too spicy. And then just mix it in there. And then take your chicken and flip it over a couple times while you're mixing it. Now if you want, you can pre-mix it and then pour it over your chicken. This is just the way I do it. I don't have to dirty up as much dishes this way. Or mix it in the bowl and then add your chicken. Okay, now it's as simple as that. Then, if you want, you can also use your fermented garlic. I have a video on how you can ferment your own garlic. And for this one, I use the fermentation starter. You can also use the lacto fermentation process using like whey and salt. This, I just used the water. I did use some salt and my fermentation starter, and it works really good. But if you'd like a more fresh garlic, then I would say take a couple of cloves of these, maybe 3 or 4 or 5. chop them up small and throw them in there. I'm not going to be doing that in this, but I will be doing it in the next meal that I make from the leftover chicken. Now all I need to do is put on my lid, and I can let it marinate for a minimum of 2 hours and up to 12. You don't really want to go that much longer than that with chicken because it marinates really easy, especially with the wine in there. It's not like red meat that takes a little bit longer. Red meat's best to marinate for like 24 hours. Now, what you're going to want to do with this chicken is about, like I said, about the halfway point. If you're marinating it for 2 hours, then at about an hour, make sure you take your fork or whatever it is you got, your tongs, and flip that chicken over so that it can be evenly marinated on both sides. I'm going to be letting it marinate all day. It's going to be at least 6 hours. So in about 3 hours, I'm going to flip this chicken over. Depending on how warm it is in your house, you may want to stick this in the refrigerator while it's marinating and how long you're marinating it. If you're only going for a couple hours, I'd say just leave it out, and it's not too hot out, and then let it marinate. The marinade's going to help protect it anyway from spoiling, but it's not that long. Since I'm doing this all day long, I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in the refrigerator today to keep it cold. And it is summer, so we need to keep it chilled. So what I'm gonna do right here is I'm just going to insert some photos because I need to get all my lights and everything put away because I got a lot of other stuff to do and more videos to shoot in other places. And so I'm going to put some pictures here so you can see when you go to grill it, it's super simple. I just throw it right on the grill. I set the heat on the lowest setting, and it will take 20 minutes to an hour depending on your grill, and making sure that you keep turning it. Take a knife and cut it every so often to check. You really want to make sure your chicken is cooked all the way through. Now if you want to speed up the process, and let's say you have minimal time, I'd say take these chicken breasts, cut them in half. They're going to marinate a little bit faster, and then they'll also cook up faster, so you can set the heat up a little bit higher. You still don't want to go too high because it's really important that you don't want to, burn the outside part of your chicken, but you want to make sure it gets cooked all the way through. So it's important to cook it as low as you can. I cook it on the lowest setting. It can take up to an hour, but it turns out really tender and flavorful that way. It gets just a little bit dark on the outside, which adds even more flavor, but not burnt. And then you can just cut it up however you want it to serve it. I like to serve it with, because it has a more Asian flavor to it, I like to serve it with a side of rice and maybe a green salad or what other vegetable you think sounds good to go with it. Now, what I like to do with the leftover chicken breast is then the next night I will cut it up. I will take, because when I cook up the rice, I then will have extra. I make sure there's plenty. And then I will make a stir-fried rice with vegetables out of that. So to this, what I did was I added some cilantro, fresh cilantro from the garden, some green onion from the garden. I was gonna put kale in, but I happen to have some red cabbage on hand because I got kale in the garden, but I have some red cabbage and I was more in the mood for that. So I added the red cabbage. I stir-fried those a little bit already. I had some carrots left over that were already cooked. And so I didn't add those to the initial stir fry, but towards the end, after everything was cooked well, then I took those carrots that that were left over from a previous dinner, cut those up a little bit smaller, and threw those in with the stir fry, along with whatever other herbs I put in. More garlic, I put in some more ginger, and then cut up the chicken smallish and put that in there too, and made sure everything heated well all the way through, and it made a very, very tasty dinner. Super easy to do and a really great way to use up leftovers. And you can do that with any other leftover or garden veggies you have that you think would sound good in it. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's what makes stir fries so great, is you can put in pretty much anything you want, anything that you think sounds good. So if you're interested in learning how to make your own homemade wine, I do have a series just on this. I'll go ahead and link to it right up here. This one here was made with the same grapes. The only difference was these grapes were frozen beforehand. And the interesting thing was these were made with fresh raw grapes. This was made for grapes that I frozen. And it's interesting the difference in color. Did it the same way, but this turned out dark, almost a reddish color. So Anyway, I have that whole series. You can check it out. It's just one of the many ways that I like to use, and even though I don't drink, it's why I like to make homemade wine with my grapes, because I have so many uses for my homemade wine, and marinating meats and stuff is just one of them. And if you're interested in other ways that you can use homemade wine for various things, whether you drink or not, I'll go ahead and link to that video right up here. I have a whole list of things that you can do with that. Now, I almost forgot, there was one more thing I wanted to say about your marinade. So I like to use the granulated or dried herbs when I'm making the initial marinade. You can use the fresh ones if you want. Just make sure you chop them up real small. The reason I like powders and granulated ones is I feel like the flavor of the spices and stuff gets into the ginger, the garlic, the onion, into the meat a lot better than using fresh. However, what you can then do with your leftover marinade, and this is really great, especially if you're making a really big batch, so you got to make a lot of marinade, because you want to make sure it's covered at least halfway up so that you can then flip it, or covered completely, is then you can take that, add about, like to this amount that I have right here, add up to a tablespoon tops of tapioca starch or arrowroot powder or an organic non-GMO cornstarch, and while it's cold, blend it in really good and then heat it through, and now you've got a really great sauce to put over your rice. And if you add a couple tablespoons or so of honey or coconut sugar, that will give it more of a teriyaki flavor. And so very, very good over rice. Just make sure you cook it through, because you know, it's for two reasons. One, because you'll need the heat to get it to thicken up with the tapioca starch or arrowroot powder or cornstarch, and because you were marinating chicken breasts or whatever in it, and especially when you're talking about anything that has to do with chicken or pork, you want to make sure it gets cooked all the way through, because you don't want to get any diseases or illnesses from it. So you don't want raw chicken or pork, anything like that. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this very simple marinade recipe for grilled chicken. And don't forget of all the many ways that you can use this leftover chicken, whatever you've got left over, not just in stir fries, but for making like a chicken salad sandwich, for adding to soups, or even making like almond chicken or anything like that. And I have some recipes out there. I'll go ahead and link to my playlist of making the most of leftovers right up here, and various ways that you can use chicken or meat or any other kind of meat or anything else that you've got left over. And yes, this will work just as well for making any of those recipes I have on there using the leftover chicken. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.